Quiet on the set, please.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
And action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. Hi, Nan.
Hi, Steve.
You know, Nan, over the years, you and I have both talked about how we once worked at law firms as one of our day jobs. When we first came to LA, we were working our way up the food chain of Hollywood.
Right.
And we all had random jobs just to pay the bills while we were trying to make it. What were some of your other random jobs?
What were my other... Oh, I worked at a tax firm. I worked at Richard Rote and Associates. Richard Rote was a wonderful television actor and kind of like a John Cleese type.
Yes. I remember him.
I worked there. And then I temped a lot. I was a great typist.
So you had smart jobs. My day jobs, like I was a waiter. Okay. I worked for a caterer. And one time I even worked for a very brief time as a process server. And I had to actually one time go to Gardenia to serve divorce papers on a stripper and almost got into a fight with a bouncer.
Oh my gosh.
Well, this is when I knew that my career as a process server was over.
Yes, I bet.
I know, but one of the most random jobs I had when I first started out was I worked in the office of the legendary talent agent Ruth Webb. Remember Ruth Webb?
I don't remember her.
Well, she was... I say legendary. She was legendary. She had been this Broadway actress back in the day, and they famously nicknamed her the Auntie Mame of agents because she was big and dramatic, and she had this flair. She wore these wild outfits that usually involved gold lame and sequins and boas. Did she have
a cigarette holder?
She didn't have a cigarette holder. That was the only thing missing. It was kind of like Mrs. Howell come to life.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And she was this kind of crazy Auntie Mame character. And so, she had opened an agency in 61, I think, in New York. Mm-hmm. And then about a decade later, she moved it to Hollywood, and she had an office, but she ran her part of the agency straight out of her bedroom in her Hollywood Hills house.
Oh, man.
Yes, her bedroom.
That sounds like a movie.
It is. But she literally conducted business out of her bedroom, and the place was this ornate, and it was glamorous. It was covered with boa feathers, and it was covered with raccoons. She had stuffed toy raccoons. She had raccoon figurines. She was obsessed
with raccoons.
But the best part, she also had live raccoons that she kept as pets in this glamorous Hollywood Hills estate. And it was nothing to see Ruth like lounging on the bed in this glamorous dressing gown, negotiating a deal on the phone while bottle feeding a baby raccoon. It was just a normal work day in Hollywood.
Okay.
So you kind of get a vibe.
I have a very clear picture
for who she is. Well, one thing she was really, really good at is she could resurrect a career of people that other people thought were done.
Okay.
She helped classic stars like Ginger Rogers and Dorothy Lamour, Donald O'Connor, Martha Raye, all these great classic stars. She helped keep them booked and keep them relevant.
Wow.
And she was a huge reason that Mickey Rooney ended up in Sugar Babies on Broadway, which he then toured with Ann Miller for years. And she also helped Yvonne DiCarlo land her career-reviving role of Carlotta in Stephen Sondheim's original production of Follies, where, of course, we all know she famously sang the song I'm Still Here, which he wrote for her. So Ruth was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and good for her that she helped all those people.
Yeah, and I love that about her. Well, my job there was answering the phones, which was always entertaining because you never knew who was going to be calling. Like sometimes it would be Cesar Romero, and sometimes it would be Dawn Wells from Gilligan's Island.
Oh my gosh.
And other times it would be Katherine Grayson on the phone. But one client who called a lot was the stunning film star Virginia Mayo. And when she called, you paid attention.
Yes.
Because Virginia meant business. She was polite, but she was very no nonsense. She was straight to the point. She wasn't rude, but she didn't have a great interest in small talk or pleasantries.
Okay.
She just wanted to cut to the chase.
She wanted to know what you were doing for her today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She would always wanted the full report. I mean, had we submitted her? What did we submit her for? Anything interesting coming up? What's up on the casting breakdowns? Who else was getting booked? And I thought about this in hindsight. She was probably in her early 70s back then.
Yeah.
I love the fact that she was still so invested in her career and wanted to know what was going on and just wanted to be on top of it, which was impressive. Well, after a while, answering the phone for so long with her, she kind of warmed up to me a tiny little bit. Just a tiny little bit. And one day she'd asked me if I knew who she was. Well, trust me, she asked the right person.
Oh, yes. Can you imagine if you didn't know who she was?
Oh, it would have been terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think she was genuinely surprised at how familiar I was with her career, maybe a little frightened. I don't know. But we had this brief moment of connection. And then, just like that, she immediately went right back to bossing me around about submissions. So this week, thanks to some encouragement from several of our listeners, we're going to dive into the life and career of the beautiful, sometimes bossy, and sometimes underrated Virginia Mayo, who's our star of the month for February.
I just have to ask a quick question before we dive in. When she said, "Do you know who I am?" How did you respond? Do you remember how you responded? Like, did you say,
my
"Oh, I
gosh.
know you were in," and then list a whole bunch of films? Or do you remember the conversation?
You know what? I do remember the conversation. I remember talking to her about White Heat.
Yes, of
course. And The Best Years of Our Lives. Because
Yes.
I think those are her two best films, which we're going to talk about. I think she was impressed that I knew some about her comedies with Danny Kaye. And I knew some things that
Yes.
weren't quite as well-known about
Well-known.
her. So
Yeah.
I think she knew that, okay, he does know who I am.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He gets it. He gets it.
And God forbid I didn't.
Well, yeah, right. She'd sick the raccoons on you, Ruth Webb would, right?
Right.
Virginia Mayo was born Virginia Clara Jones in St. Louis, Missouri, on November 30th, 1920. Her father was in advertisement sales and her mother was a homemaker. It was probably a strong indicator that baby Virginia would be in the movies, for her mother was at the movies when she went into labor and she was rushed home and gave birth. That's so funny.
That's funny.
Virginia's family was really pretty impressive. One family ancestor was Captain James Pigott, who served with George Washington.
Wow.
And later founded East St. Louis, Illinois. Because of her ancestors, Virginia was designated a daughter of the American Revolution. Growing up, she was exposed to the arts by her father's older sister, so her aunt Alice, who ran a dance academy. And Mayo started taking dance lessons when she was 6. This got her interested in theater, and then in high school, she was a standout in the drama department and was often cast as the lead in the school play.
Also in high school, because as a kid, she'd been skinny, she'd been kind of sickly. Well, she blossomed in high school. She became this beautiful honey blonde, green-eyed beauty. And when she graduated high school in 1937, she joined a dance troupe which performed floor shows at the Chase Hotel there in St. Louis. And this led to a job dancing with the St. Louis Municipal Opera. And unlike many parents, her parents actually encouraged her creative endeavors. And as Mayo once said in an interview, she said, quote, "It was the end of the Depression, and the fact that I could use my talents to get paid for them impressed my parents very much."
And maybe that's why they continue to kind of push her forward.
Yeah, maybe
right?
so.
Well, while she was working at the Chase Hotel, she was approached by Andy Mayo and Nornie Morton. These were two men who had a comedy act called... this name just kills me. Their act is called Pansy the Horse.
Oh, sign me up. I'm in.
Right? In which they dressed as a horse, and Andy Mayo, because one was a front, one was a back, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
And then Andy Mayo's wife, Florence, sang and danced and acted as the ring mistress to the horse. Oh my God, the entertainment. Just think, if we had been alive back then, we could have just been so famous by just...
Oh, I could have been half of a horse, you know?
Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, it seems that Florence was pregnant, and so they needed to get a new girl for the act, right? So they approached Virginia. She accepted, and this became her first headlining role. In order to eliminate any confusion with booking agents, Virginia was asked to change her stage name to Mayo, so the act could remain Mayo and Morton.
Ah.
So she did, and she kept the name for the rest of her career.
While she was working with Mayo and Morton, they were hired in 1942 by the famed impresario Billy Rose. We all have heard about Billy Rose. And they were hired as an act for his famed Diamond Horseshoe Club. Well, Billy Rose saw great potential in Virginia Mayo, and he began to create these specialty numbers for her to kind of show her off. He also, unbeknownst to Mayo, invited movie producer Samuel Goldwyn to come to the show to see her. Well, Goldwyn was impressed and asked for a meeting, and after the meeting, he said he wanted to screen test her. Well, shortly after this meeting, Mayo got wind that another movie producer, David O. Selznick, was also interested in her and wanted to make a screen test. So she did both tests, and as it worked in Hollywood back then, Goldwyn and Selznick were really good friends, so they actually got together and discussed who was going to sign Virginia Mayo. Well, Goldwyn won, and Mayo was signed to a 5-year personal contract at $100 a week, which was probably the equivalent of around $1,850 today. And this led to her screen debut. She had a little tiny part as a model in the film Follies Girls from 1943 for Poverty Row Studio PRC.
Well, Goldwyn whisked Mayo off to Hollywood and set her up in an apartment at the Ravenswood Apartments, we've been by there, which was owned at the time by Mae West. However, Mayo's tenure living there was short-lived once West discovered that she had a dog, Dinky, with her, and West had a strict no-pet policy, so Mayo was kicked out and moved to the Hollywood Tower Apartments on Franklin. So what a nice welcome to Hollywood, right?
I know, thanks, Mae West.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, she was soon groomed for stardom, and about this transformation, Mayo once said, and this is a quote, "My God, it was coming out of my ears, how to speak, how to project my image on the screen, how to act in front of the camera, how to walk. I mean, every kind of lesson I needed for screen work." Now, this also included her working with an acting coach named Florence Enright, who was a well-known acting coach at the time.
Yeah, she worked with a lot of people.
And Goldwyn was specifically grooming her to be paired with his latest discovery, funny man Danny Kaye. He really wanted Mayo to play opposite Kaye in this upcoming comedy Up in Arms from 1944. But she screen tested, and Danny Kaye did not like the screen test, and he had some input as to his leading lady.
Okay.
So she didn't get the part. Constance Dowling was brought in cast, and Mayo was regulated to a temporary spot in the chorus as one of the Goldwyn girls, something that she was not happy about one bit.
I can imagine.
Well, whether it was his rejection of her or maybe just this personality issue, but Mayo and Danny Kaye, who were magical together on screen, absolutely disliked each other so much in real life. Yeah. Kaye was always trying to get another actress besides Mayo as his co-star, and Mayo once said of Kaye, and this is the quote, "Everybody loved Danny Kaye, but believe me, he wasn't all that easy to be around."
I wonder what he would say about her.
I'm sure he had a lot to say about her.
Well, to give her some more screen experience, Goldwyn loaned her out to producer Samuel Bronstone and United Pictures for the biopic Jack London, 1943. On the set of this film, she met someone who would become a very important figure in her life, fellow actor Michael O'Shea, whom she would marry 4 years later in 1947 in an intimate ceremony attended by Vera Allen, Adele Jurgens, Kathy O'Donnell, and Carmen Miranda. Oh, I love those four women.
That's a nice little lineup there.
And she would remain married to Michael O'Shea until his death in 1973.
Next up, Goldwyn loaned her out to RKO for a role in this very mediocre movie called 7 Days Ashore from 1944, which starred Wally Brown. She reluctantly agreed, and she tried to make the best of a really bad movie, but her willingness to follow Goldwyn's direction for her career was actually rewarded next when she was screen tested and won the lead role in the fantasy comedy The Princess and the Pirate, also 1944, opposite the great funny man himself, Bob Hope. Now, this film was in Technicolor, which I think Virginia Mayo was born for. And she was nervous in the role, but Hope really made her feel comfortable. Of this experience, she said, quote, "I was so frightened of the camera, I would become frozen having this big thing right on top of me. I couldn't seem to overcome it, but working with Bob gave me a feeling of freedom, and I was able to relax." Even though Mayo had a lovely singing voice, she was dubbed in the film by Luann Hogan. The role was mostly decorative, but it got her notice, with New York Times critic Bosley Crowther writing that she was a pleasant show in her own right.
Well, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get further into the career of Virginia Mayo, it's time for this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
And today's pop quiz question. In the 1960s, Virginia Mayo was in serious consideration to star in a sitcom that would go on to be this iconic, long-running comedy that ran from 1965 to 1971. However, she lost out on the role to another glamorous blonde. Anybody know the show?
Oh, let me think on that. We'll be right back with the answer and more about Virginia Mayo after this.
Steve and Ann will be right back, but first another stop on the Hollywood tour. One of the more bizarre Virginia Mayo stories happened in 1947. It was just after the Black Dahlia murder, and Los Angeles was a bit on edge. Columnist Luella Parsons said she'd gotten a tip that Mayo had disappeared. Parsons wrote that both the Samuel Goldwyn studios and Michael O'Shea, Mayo's fiancé, revealed Virginia had been missing since a Friday night. O'Shea said he was, quote, frantic over her disappearance and was ready to ask police in on the case. But just 2 nights later, the manager of Virginia's apartment building on Franklin Avenue revealed she had just left with her mother Thursday afternoon. The manager of a nearby gas station said that on that day he serviced the actress's car, which was loaded with boxes. He changed the oil. She drove off with her mother. Seems Mayo missed both an acting class and a Friday night date with O'Shea. Denying any rift between them, the actor explained that Virginia had been very blue since her Boston bulldog Dinky had died of poisoning a month prior. Anyway, turned out it was just a 3-day road trip with Mayo and her mom. One can't help but wonder if all that publicity might have been a studio's dream come true, huh? Now back to Steve and Ann from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Welcome back, everybody. This week we are talking about our Star of the Month, Virginia Mayo. But before we get further into her life and career, I wanted to give a shout out to our Listener of the Week. And this week we honor Diane Pansell Pierce, who is a wonderful musician from Canada who has been so supportive of our podcast. She likes things, she comments, she shares. We really appreciate all the love and support, Diane.
Thank you, Diane. When we left off, Virginia Mayo had just gotten a great review from the New York Times. And now she's going to finally get to star opposite Danny Kaye in Wonder Man, 1945, a funny comedy where she and Vera Ellen play it straight to Kaye in a dual role. Well, the film was a hit, and Kaye and Mayo's chemistry was palpable. So
on screen.
Yes, on screen, not off screen. Well, maybe off screen in a different way.
Maybe.
Yeah. They were quickly reteamed in the comedy The Kid from Brooklyn, 1946, which also included Vera Ellen and added bad boy Steve Cochran to the cast. I haven't seen that, but is it?
It's cute. Yeah, it's fun. And they have really great chemistry.
Yeah.
You know.
Once again, Virginia sang 2 songs in the film, but again, she was dubbed, this time by Betty Russell. The film was another hit. The box office success led to a 3rd pairing for Mayo and Kaye, and this one was the one that we all remember,
Yes.
The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, 1947, where she plays fantasy girl to Kaye's mild-mannered Mitty. The film also starred Boris Karloff in his typical scary role, and your good friend, Anne Rutherford,
that's
in
right.
a role not too dissimilar to her Polly Benedict role in the Andy Hardy movies.
I know. I always used to joke that some of the traits about Anne on camera is she always puts her hands on her hips and pouts.
Okay.
She was always like perturbed.
Yes, yes.
Well, when Mayo was shooting Walter Mitty, she discovered that her mentor, Sam Goldwyn, was planning to make this feature film from this McKinley Cantor novel, Glory for Me. Well, she was kind of getting tired of playing the straight woman of these comics, and she read the novel, and she found a role in the novel that she really, really wanted. And it was the role of Marie Derry, who was this war bride who turns into this 2-timing party girl while her husband's away at war. Well, Goldwyn balked at giving her the part, saying that she was a nice girl and this character was anything but. Well, not to be discouraged, Virginia Mayo went out and had herself some sexy photos taken.
Okay.
And it really presented herself as the character, so she showed them to Goldwyn, and this, in essence, kind of helped him see her in the role.
She kind of pulled a Norma Shearer.
She pulled a Norma Shearer, exactly. Of course, the film was later renamed The Best Years of Our Lives. You might have heard of it, from 1946, and it became one of the most popular and renowned films of all time.
Yeah.
It won 7 Academy Awards, and Mayo joined a stellar cast that included Frederick March, Myrna Loy, Dana Andrews, Harold Russell, Kathy O'Donnell, Steve Cochran, and Hoagie Carmichael. Now, interestingly, Mayo filmed Walter Mitty and Best Years of Our Lives simultaneously.
How amazing.
I know. So
What
it must have been really fun for her. She goes from being, this hardened, promiscuous wife to being this sweet, lovely fantasy girl. What a fun thing for an actress.
Yes.
Well, of her performance in The Best Years of Our Lives, Luella Parsons wrote, quote, "I simply marveled at the brassy effectiveness of her work as Dana's cheap chorus girl wife. I never dreamed such a pretty creature as Virginia could be that dramatic. I never dreamed either that she could act." But I now know that she can.
She really is memorable. It's not a big role, but
No.
How smart of her to recognize that was going to be a showy piece for her. And as I mentioned to you, the TCM Film Festival this year in May
Yes.
is going to be playing The Best Years of Our Lives on the big screen.
I cannot wait.
Get out your Kleenex box.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I've never seen her on the big screen.
I haven't either. I
so
can't
excited.
wait. Despite being recognized for her dramatic turn in The Best Years of Our Lives, it was back to good old Danny Kaye comedies for Mayo. In 1948, the screen duo was cast by director Howard Hawks in his ambitious remake of the iconic film Ball of Fire, 1941. The remake was called A Song is Born in 1948. Despite its pedigree, the film was a disappointment. This would be her fifth and final film with Danny Kaye.
Once A Song is Born was released, she was caught off guard when Goldwyn abruptly dropped her contract.
That is very strange.
Yeah, it came out of left field, and she really floundered as this independent artist for a while. She made this forgettable film, Smart Girls Don't Talk, in 48 with Bruce Bennett, and this film was distributed by Warner Brothers, who wanted to beef up their studio's musical division, and they saw great potential in Mayo, so they offered her a 7-year contract, which began a new phase of her career.
And at this point, she's only 28 years old.
Yeah, she's young.
Yeah. Well, her first film under her new Warner Brothers contract was Flaxie Martin, 1949, a gangland film noir where Mayo plays a two-timing chorus girl opposite our favorite Zachary Scott.
Love him.
She followed this with her first Western in Colorado Territory, directed by Raoul Walsh. She plays, I love her name, Colorado Corson.
Oh, there's a name.
The rough and tumble, half Native American girlfriend of Joel McCrea's train robber character.
So interesting that she played a half Native American girl. I mean,
She's so white
blonde,
and so
blue-eyed,
blonde.
white. Yeah, interesting.
These two roles were a departure for Mayo and were certainly a long way from her days of singing and dancing with Danny Kaye.
Yeah, I'll say. We know this period of her career culminated in the film that she's probably best known for, and it's a good one. In the gangster masterpiece White Heat, 1949, again directed by Raoul Walsh, she played Verna, the cheap two-timing. I've noticed a theme with her. Cheap two-timing. She plays that a lot. Well, she plays it again, the gun moll to James Cagney's unhinged gangster Cody Jarrett. Now, this film really gave Mayo an opportunity to show off her dramatic skills, and she is so good in this role.
Yeah, she really is.
It really made her a major star, and she began appearing on magazine covers, and she was often touted as one of Hollywood's most beautiful women. In fact, during the late 1940s, the Sultan of Morocco, Mohammed V, said that Virginia Mayo was, and this is a quote, tangible proof of the existence of God.
I love that.
Wow. So after all of this, you'd think that she'd be assigned bigger and better roles at Warner Brothers.
Yes.
But rather than capitalize on this impressive showing in White Heat, the studio assigned her a series of really unremarkable films, such as the inferior film noir Red Light from 1949 with George Raft, who was another leading man that she did not care for. She actually called him a non-actor.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, she was also in this flimsy comedy, Always Leave Them Laughing, also in 1949 with Milton Berle and Ruth Roman. She was in Backfire from 1950, which is a pretty solid film noir, but she is assigned the boring good girl role opposite Gordon McCrae. It's not a very impressive role for her. Mm-hmm. And she's also in the forgettable adventure film The Flame and the Arrow from 1950, where nothing more is required of her other than looking beautiful in Technicolor on the arm of Burt Lancaster, which she could handle pretty well. And she was also in this musical comedy, The West Point Story from 1950, where they re-teamed her with James Cagney, but to no great fanfare.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, while she did fare better in the historical adventure film Captain Horatio Hornblower from 1951, she had little to do other than look good on the arm of Gregory Peck.
Well, and finally, there's a leading man that she actually really liked. She's quoted as saying about Gregory Peck, "Oh, now there's a man." He's so fantastic, wonderful, and charming. He and Ronald Reagan were equal in charm. Greg was a better actor because he took it more seriously than Ronnie. Greg was great in love scenes. He was tender, sensitive, and a good kisser. Love scenes with him were enjoyable.
Ah, Virginia.
I mean, can you imagine? I think she's, looking at Gregory Peck. Wouldn't you just imagine that's how he would be?
Just get paid to make out with Gregory Peck?
Yes, exactly. Well, entering the 50s, she should have been, as you said, entering the zenith of her career, but instead, it's a mixed bag of films that were often not worthy of her talents. Anybody remember she's working her way through college?
No.
1952 with Ronald Reagan. South Sea Woman, 1953 with Burt Lancaster.
No.
Pearl of the Pacific, 1955 with Dennis Morgan.
Once again, no.
Yeah. She is nice eye candy in the god-awful biblical drama The Silver Chalice, 1954, a film that star Paul Newman called the worst motion picture produced during the 50s.
And he wasn't wrong.
Yeah, that's pretty
It is
searing.
such a bad movie.
Well, in 1955, Mayo's contract at Warner Brothers was dropped. And once again, she was floundering as an independent actress. I mean, think of all the actresses at Warner Brothers that she would have been up against.
Oh, Betty Davis and Ann Sheridan.
This was really okay with her that she moved into this independent status as she wanted to spend time with her young daughter, Mary Catherine O'Shea, whom she had given birth to in 1953.
Now, the end of the 1950s saw more of the same for Virginia Mayo as she was kind of struggling to find her footing again. And despite giving it her all, she wasn't able to land another role that really put her back on top. She was wasted in this cheap adventure film called Congo Crossing in 1956 with George Nader, this uninspiring Western like The Big Land, 1957 with Alan Ladd, and this silly sword and sandal trite called The Story of Mankind from 1957, which was directed by future master of disaster Irwin Allen, and where she also gets to play Cleopatra. Around this time, she also began to appear on television in shows like The Loretta Young Show and Wagon Train.
Just a quick side note, she loved also working with Alan Ladd. She is quoted as saying, "I worked with Alan Ladd, who along with Gregory Peck was my favorite leading man. He was a beautiful man, charming and gentle, and I think of all my leading men, he worked best with me." And she only did the one picture with Alan Ladd,
they didn't
right?
reteam them, so yeah.
Interesting. Well, as the 60s rolled around, she decided to take some time off for her daughter, and she entered a period of semi-retirement. During that time, she and her husband and daughter moved to Ireland, but they weren't happy there. Their daughter, Mary, begged to move back to the U.S., so they returned in 1965 and built a home in Thousand Oaks. There, Virginia set up house and spent time being a stay-at-home mom. When she decided it was time to get back to work, the industry had changed. I mean, that was a huge shift in the 60s.
Huge shift.
So the studio contract system was coming to an end, so actors had to generate their own career paths, which had pros and cons. Hence, your conversations with her on the phone where she was like, she got it.
She was on it, yeah.
She was on it.
Because she knew that she was in charge of her career.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also by the mid-60s, Mayo was no longer the young peaches and cream ingenue, of course. She's in her 40s now, which is still very young, people. But at the time, that would have been considered over the hill.
Yeah, you're playing
your 40s.
Grandmas at that point in Hollywood.
And while she's still a beautiful woman, she had grown a little bit, what's the word?
Blousy?
Yeah, a little blousy. And the glamour girl was beginning to transition into a character actress,
Which isn't a bad thing.
I think it's a great thing, because you do get to play fun parts, right? Her first films after returning from semi-retirement were nothing special. In the B-Western Young Fury, she plays a saloon keeper whose teenaged son has become a gunslinger. In Castle of Evil, 1966, a cheapy horror film at Universal.
I love that movie so much.
I have never seen that movie.
It is so bad, it's good.
Well, the
I
poster
love it.
looks pretty bad.
The
movie poster. In that film, she has to survive a crazed electronic killer robot in a remote castle.
See? Sounds great, huh?
Yeah. It also featured Scott Brady, Hugh Marlowe, and Lisa Gay, which is a great cast.
It's a great cast, yeah. Well, by the end of the 60s, she was cast as Dolly Levi in a summer stock production of Hello, Dolly. Now, this really changed the trajectory of her career somewhat as she began to do more theater, appearing often opposite her husband, Michael O'Shea, who had stopped pursuing a full-time acting career and had really turned to working with the FBI and local law enforcement,
Wow.
which is a whole nother story. story. Well, she appeared in plays such as Tunnel of Love, George Washington Slept Here, No No Nanette, Barefoot in the Park, 40 Carats, Cactus Flower, Butterflies Are Free, Bye Bye Birdie, and it just goes on and on and on. And in 1973, while Mayo was appearing at a dinner theater production of 40 Carats in Dallas, her beloved husband, Michael O'Shea, died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving Mayo lost and devastated.
Was he actually performing when it happened?
Yeah, they were in it together.
Oh my gosh. So Mayo slowly, after his death, returned to work. One notable film that she made during this era was the fun, campy spoof of old Hollywood. I love this title. One Ton Ton and the Dog Who Saved Hollywood.
I love this movie.
Has everybody in it.
Everybody's in this movie.
Yeah. Bruce Dern, Madeline Kahn, Terry Garr, and Art Carney star in it, but it also features almost every classic film star you can think of. I wonder if Ruth Webb had something to do.
Ruth might have gotten commissions out the yin-yang for this one.
All these people. Dorothy Lamour, Dennis Morgan, Rhonda Fleming, Joan Blondell, Ricardo Montalban, Rory Calhoun, Victor Mature, Alice Faye, Yvonne DiCarlo, Walter Pidgeon, Milton Berle, Ann Miller, Sid Charisse, and so many more. And it's a really fun film. Mayo plays Art Carney's sarcastic secretary, and... It
was Ann Rutherford's last feature film.
Wow.
Yeah, she actually plays Bruce Dern's secretary at the very end when he becomes this big studio boss.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
I have seen parts of it. I have not seen the whole thing.
It was a notorious bomb at the box office, but it is so fun.
Well, especially now.
Yeah. And
to look back.
You almost have to watch it with your IMDb page open because literally everybody with a line, there's somebody.
There's somebody in it. And people that are now famous that were in the smaller roles.
So fun.
Yeah.
Well, her film career slowed down during the 1970s and she appeared mostly on television. She guest starred on shows like Night Gallery and Police Story while still managing to pop up occasionally in films such as the horror film Hunted, 1977, which starred Aldo Ray, and the B-movie French Quarter from 1978, a mystery about a New Orleans prostitute. But most of her screen time in the 1970s was definitely on television. She did shows like Murder, She Wrote, which became a must-stop for any faded movie star at that point. Of course. She was in Remington Steele and my favorite, The Love Boat.
Yep.
Now, in 1984, she even appeared on the soap opera Santa Barbara as a character named, I love this name, Peach's Delight.
She had quite an arc. I think she did like 12 episodes.
And she was a former stripper, Peach's Delight.
Yeah, of course she was. Yeah.
I know. Well, her final screen appearance came in 1997 in the horror film The Man Next Door. It was kind of an inauspicious ending for a once great film star, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, in her later years, Mayo became interested in painting and spent time spoiling her 3 grandchildren. Virginia Mayo died of pneumonia and complications of congestive heart failure in Thousand Oaks, California on January 17th, 2005 at the age of 84. She's buried next to her husband in Pierce Brothers Valley Oaks Park in Westlake Village, California. And Virginia Mayo was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and she has a star in her hometown of St. Louis.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Lovely career.
She would have been a great guest on this podcast.
She would have, because she would tell it like it was.
She would. She would not
she would not hold back. Yeah, there'd be no soft pedaling anything.
No. Well, let's remind our listeners what this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz is.
Well, the question was, in the 1960s, she was in serious consideration to star in this classic, iconic sitcom that ended up running from 65 to 71. However, she lost the job to another glamorous blonde. What was the TV show?
We were racking our brains, and we really never came up with a good answer.
Well, it was Green Acres.
Of course it was Green Acres.
Almost Lisa Douglas. But of course, they cast the right person because Ava Gabor was just perfection in that role. She was. But I could see Virginia Mayo being fine in that role.
I could too. I bet she could put on an accent, right? Well, thank you everyone for listening and spending this time with us. We would love it if you would give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you watch the podcast on YouTube, if you would give us a thumbs up and subscribe, we sure would appreciate it. Also, you can follow us on social media. Our handle is @FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign. You'll find us on Facebook and Instagram.
And we love hearing from you. Please keep those emails coming. You can email us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com.
That's this week's View.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Ann McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, and tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. Associate producer and researcher John Price Ritchie. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved. That's a wrap.